Forget the ravens, the haunted landscapes, and the tales of terror. This is a different Edgar Allan Poe that we're exploring today in this podcast. We are going to delve into the life and legacy of a man who shattered records not with words, but with running the ball and handing it off. He wasn't a writer of the macabre, but a master of the gridiron, and he wasn't shrouded in mystery, but etched his name in football history. And we have our friend Jeff Payne coming to talk about Edgar Allan Poe, the quarterback of Princeton, and first quarterback that was an All-American. Coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to another edition where we get to have our friend Jeff Payne from the VFC, a collector, historian, and a great preserver of football history, joining us. Jeff, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
So great to be here, Darren. I appreciate it. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, you have some really exciting things to talk about, here from the college game tonight. And this is going way back into the 19th century. And it's a very poetic, if I may say that, that you're going to be talking about. So I'm going to let you set it all up and, knock them down here.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks, Darren. Appreciate it. Yeah, I thought we'd take a little twist and go college tonight just for fun. College season ended recently as well as the pros. So I was just thinking about some of the early greats, and one jumped to mind that I thought would be interesting to talk about, and that is a gentleman named Edgar Allan Poe. And a lot of people didn't know that, this poet, he was a heck of a football player. Boy, he was, a heck of a player in his day. No, it's not the poet. It's not the poet. They are related, though. And interestingly enough, they're related. Edgar Allan Poe, the poet, is Edgar Allan Poe, the football player's great uncle, and his second cousin twice removed. I guess the family tree was a little convoluted. There was the marrying of cousins in there, apparently, which means that he's actually related. They're related in two different directions, which is kind of interesting.
Hey, you have to keep that Poe name going somehow,
Yeah, exactly. And I was first attracted to Edgar Allan Poe, the football player, because of his great uncle, right? I mean, I remember reading some of those poems and short stories when I was a kid, and I liked that kind of stuff when I was a kid, and I just thought it was really cool that his namesake played college football, and not only played college football but was really good. He was on the first All-American team. He's the first All-American quarterback in college football history. 1889, first year they selected a team, and he was the selection. He played for Princeton. And they went undefeated that year and won the national championship. So, he's pretty well known in the early football. Yeah.
Now, didn't he had a bunch of brothers that were pretty good football players for Princeton too? They kept the roster stocked up pretty good there in Princeton.
Yeah, I'm guessing the family had some cash, is my bet, because
Yeah.
you don't send 6 boys to Princeton in the 1800s unless your family's got some money, I know his dad was the Attorney General of Maryland, and Edgar Allan Poe also eventually became the Attorney General of Maryland, followed in his father's footsteps. In fact, he got a law degree and practiced law with his dad for a time as well. But yeah, there were 6 brothers that played there. 2 of them were All-Americans. Edgar Allan Poe and his younger brother, Arthur Poe, was also an All-American, but they all played. All 6 played.
And Arthur's in the College Football Hall of Fame too, I believe.
He is. Yes. I believe he's the only Poe in the College Football Hall of Fame. Now, one of the brothers, Johnny Poe, he was named after his father, John Prentice Poe. He might have been the best of them, but he had a lot of trouble studying, and he made varsity as a freshman. He was also, I believe, class president as a freshman. So obviously a very, outward gregarious, leader type. But he played football. He made varsity his freshman year, and then he got sent home for grades for the second semester. And I don't know what he did to kind of recover, but he was back in school in the fall to play football again. Played and did really well again as a sophomore. He was a star, and then he got asked to leave again, and that time he didn't come back. So tragically, he became a mercenary. He started fighting in wars all over the world. He was an adventure seeker, and he ultimately, unfortunately, got killed doing that. But there's Poe. I think it's Poe Field. One of the fields at Princeton is named in his honor, John Poe. In his honor. So that's Edgar Allan Poe, the football player's brother. So
yeah, so 2 semesters in college, and both of them were college football seasons that he
isn't
played.
that funny how that worked?
Yeah.
Even Princeton was, cooking the books maybe a little bit
Right.
to keep the
bring
up
in
and
the
coming
ringers.
star. Yeah, keep him in the game. So one quote I saw that I thought was funny was apparently when Princeton and Harvard played, after the game, the story goes that a Harvard alum came up to a Princeton alum and said, "Hey, I need to ask you about this fellow Edgar Allan Poe. He's a really good player. Is he related to the great Edgar Allan Poe?" And the Princeton player or alum kind of stuck his nose up in the air and he said, "He is the great Edgar Allan Poe." So it's like touche.
Yeah, overshadowing the poet there, because
Yep.
football had a bigger priority back then too. See,
Yeah, I know, right? Some things never change, right?
Right. Maybe that alum
Yep.
had it right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I started collecting some Edgar Allan Poe stuff. It's hard to find, like a lot of that early, college memorabilia. It's just really difficult to track anything down from that era. There obviously weren't a lot of cards produced, and even photographs weren't, as common, obviously, as they became. So it's kind of hard to find stuff, but I have been able to track down a few cool things I thought I'd share with you today.
Yeah.
The first one's my big dog, I call it. Back in the late 1800s, a popular form for photographs were called cabinet cards, and they were, cards affixed to a cardboard backing, and people, displayed them. There were albums you could insert them in. There were sleeves and albums that you could put these cabinet cards in, and you could, prop them up. You could trade them. You could do whatever you wanted with them. And in fact, some college albums actually were made with cabinet cards. They would produce cabinet cards and put them in the albums for the students that bought the yearbooks. And in fact, you could customize them. You could decide who was going to be in your yearbook, right? Because they were all interchangeable. Now, of course, people pulled most of them out. If it's anybody famous or a team, they've been purchased and pulled out over the last 100 years or whatever. But these things, cabinet cards, were really popular. The standard size was pretty small. They were kind of 6.5 by 4.25, kind of, so, kind of a good, strong, card. Those are the most frequent ones that you see, is the kind of traditional size, the standard size. But there were other sizes actually as well that you don't see very much. You don't even see them, non-sports ones very much. There was a real tall, skinny one. My French isn't that great. I believe all of these were French words. It's called boudoir or boudoir or boudoir. You have to ask a French major. Boudoir cabinet, which was taller, 8.5 by kind of 5.25. So really tall and skinny. A lot of times those were used for landscape. If you wanted something tall, show something skinny and tall, or, horizontal, very wide, skinny and wide, they would use that look, because you could kind of get, a little closer with it. But the big dog was what are called the imperial cabinets. And those things were these big, huge cabinets. And size is like 9.75 by like 6.75. They're big. You don't see very many of those. Football or non-football, sports or non-sports, you just don't see them. I'm assuming they were very expensive, is my bet, because I'm sure as the photographs got bigger, right, the equipment, got probably more expensive and harder to obtain back then. And so you don't see very many of those imperial size cabinets.
Yeah, I mean, just to sit there and think about it, it's almost like the size of a piece of copy paper, just a
Huge.
little bit smaller.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me pop up and show you, because I was fortunate enough, collector friend had an imperial cabinet of Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm guessing it was paid for and produced by his family. I mean, it wouldn't have been done for a college or anything, because I'm sure, as mentioned, it was really expensive to do this at such a scale, but it is a great image. And let me pop it up here real quick.
Yeah,
And
folks that are on the podcast side, on the YouTube side, Jeff is sharing his screen and bringing an image of Edgar Allan Poe. Wow, is it beautiful? So
yes, there's Edgar. If for those that can't see it, it's full. He's in his full uniform. It's toes to head, heads to toes. Fake background. This was done in a studio. Kind of one of the most famous producers of photography back then was, some people pronounce it Pack Brothers. It was a studio. As you see down bottom, there's an address, and it's kind of cut off, but it says Pack Brothers over on the left. So it is one of the Pack Brothers imperial cabinets. He's holding a football, and
gorgeous egg-shaped watermelon ball.
I know, look at that thing, right?
Yeah, there's not a sharp edge on that one, is there?
Yeah, I was looking at that figure, and it's a good thing they didn't pass back then, because I don't know what you do with that thing. You
Right,
see people, where they like slung it over their head, and stuff like that. It's like throwing I don't know, like a shot put or discus or something.
And these photographs back then, I don't believe, I think they were still were that the flash on the flash photography back then. It took a few seconds to go off, so they had to hold a pose. That's why you never
They
see
did.
too many people smiling, because they were uncomfortable from staying in the same position for so long. And
Exactly.
Poe's got a little bit of a sourpuss look on his face too. So
He does. Yeah, and if you go to his Wikipedia page, you'll see it's not this exact image, but it's just slightly off. So it was probably, another shot that they took, because it's the same uniform, same background, same ball. It's just his head's turned a little bit to the side, but it definitely was taken at the same time. That image that's on Wikipedia.
yeah, that is a very, very nice image. Now, is there it was just a canned background that they're standing in from, right? Like a screen or something, like we would see
Yes.
it like Olin Mills or Sears, like when you'd take the kids to get their photographs taken.
Yeah, and I know some of the shots of the Yale players. There's a famous fence in Yale, and they
The
sit on the
Yale wall,
fence.
yeah.
Yeah, and Pac must have set something like that up, because there were lots of photographs in their studio that look like you were on campus, but I believe they were done in the studio. I wouldn't be surprised if this background is a Princeton background that Pac used for Princeton players, or
Yeah, that's where I was
alums.
going to go with it, because you always see like the Walter Camp, they even says in the title of it, Walter Camp on the Yale fence, and a lot, like you said, a lot of the players, Pudge Heffelfinger, all of them are on the Yale fence in their images.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's one item. Yeah, and I was so excited when I won that. When things come up for auction, you see things you like, and you're like, oh, that'd be nice. I'd like to have this. When I heard this thing was coming up to auction, I was like, this is like a thing you got to go after. You got to go hard for this, because I've never seen, not just another imperial image of Poe, but I've never seen, I don't think, another imperial football cabinet card. I'm sure there's some out there, but I've never seen one at auction.
Yeah, I've never heard of one that big. That's
No.
gigantic. But I'll tell you what, they just think about the photography. This is 130 over 130 years ago this image was taken.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks almost like he could walk off the page and, walk right
No.
into your room that you're sitting in, because it's
Yeah.
very, very vivid, and a lot of detail on it for being a 19th century image.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So let me switch gears and talk about another
Okay.
smaller piece, which I think you'll find interesting. Let me pop this one up and we can talk about it. So another collector buddy of mine ran into and found a set of 10 images of football players from Princeton in their kind of senior portrait outfit. So this is Edgar Allan Poe's senior portrait for his senior year at Princeton. It's all gussied up, as you can see, nice big fat,
Not in a
big
tie.
fat
That's like
knot
a
in his tie, right?
quadruple Windsor there or
I
something.
know. I was looking at that thinking, how many times did he wrap around on that thing? But that was probably, it's probably the style then, right?
Right.
Got the little collar with the, little ends on it.
The end of the tie probably comes to, way above his belly button if he took his
Yep.
was his jacket. Wow.
Another Patch Brothers, Pock Brothers cabinet card. This is the standard size. So this is the size that you typically see for cabinet cards that are out there. And a buddy of mine I found 10 of these. Somebody was selling them. I don't know if they got them out of a yearbook, probably did. And all he knew about them was that it was 10 football players. Someone had written names on the back. He wasn't sure if they were accurate or whatever, but there were names written on the back. And he reached out to me and he said, hey, there's one card in here. I don't recognize any of the names, but this one name I recognize, but only the last name because it says Pete Poe on the back. And he's like, who the heck is Pete Poe? Well, that was Edgar Allan Poe's nickname, was Peter or Pete. He went by that at school. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was a thing with his uncle. Who knows? You're getting tired of listening to people talking about the Raven or something,
Right.
Little did he know the Raven would make an appearance in pro football. But yeah, he said, do you know who this is? And I'm like, oh, I know exactly who this is. I can tell just by looking at him, it's Edgar Allan Poe. And I was aware that he went by Peter or Pete as a nickname. And so, I told the collector, I was like, I'd really like to have it, but I'm not gonna pull the wool over your eyes. This is Edgar Allan Poe. The other people, I said, I have no idea who they are. They don't sound familiar. I don't think they may not have even played through their senior year. If you say they were football players, I believe you. But there's nobody else in this group that's, noteworthy.
I mean, the quality of this piece, it doesn't look like there's any. I mean, the other one had a little bit of damage on the edges, but this one, wow, it looks very pristine for the age of it. Wow, remarkable.
Yeah, they were all like that. That's why I think they were taken out of a yearbook. They probably were in there for, who knows, maybe 100 years or more, and somebody acquired the yearbook and slid those babies right out of there and started selling them off.
Now, how in the vessel that they were in the yearbook, this is long before plastic, I'm assuming. So what were they, like a vellum or something they were sliding them in?
Yeah, it was like I have an old yearbook from the 1880s from Yale, and basically think of it as 2 pages kind of pasted together. The top page had cutouts, usually 2 per page. Cutouts and a slit that you could slide these up into the cutout so you could see the image between the 2 pages. So they had this little, way to get between the pages and slide these into the opening that the top page had so you could see the images. And then they just stayed there because they, kind of slid in there pretty tight. And
wow,
made it pretty bulky, though. They're pretty bulky, because these are all cardboard backed, and you start, throwing those into pages in a yearbook and it gets pretty thick pretty fast.
Yeah, wow,
so
amazing.
But yeah, they're kind of cool, those yearbooks.
Yeah, it looks like in this image he's telling them, hey, why don't you get my good side in this photo here? Let me look over to the side.
Yeah, exactly. Here,
the
turn
pose.
the other way. Yeah, and
Cool.
I did pick up all 10 of the cabinet cards just because I was interested in seeing if I could track down the other 9, find out if anybody there did anything noteworthy. I found a few tidbits, but as mentioned, none of them played football all the way through their college career. A lot of them were on the freshman team with Edgar Allan Poe and maybe dropped off or, didn't make varsity and got discouraged. There were two players with the same last name as mine, Payne. And I was like, oh, wow, maybe, one of them's a relative, So I started digging into, where their families came from and just trying to figure out, was there any connection at all? Because I thought it would be pretty cool to have a card from a relative.
Right.
One I rolled out pretty fast just based on where that person came from. I know where my family's lived for the last couple hundred years. We've done, some genealogy stuff through the decades, and I was like, nope, that's not it. Maybe way back somewhere, but nope. But the other one actually was a kind of Northwest Pennsylvania, where you and I grew up, Darren.
Oh, really?
I wasn't able to attach this person to the tree anywhere, so I'm not exactly sure what the relationship might be, but he was from the general vicinity of my family. So who knows, right?
Yeah. Could be. You never know.
Yep.
Huh.
Never know.
Very cool.
That's the second. The third one needs a little bit of setup, and that is around something called a trade card. I know you're familiar with trade cards, Darren. So trade cards were kind of like business cards back to the 1700s and into and through the 1800s. They were usually square, rectangular. They were bigger than what today we would think of as a business card, more like a postcard size. A lot of them are. Sometimes you see them as, almost like bookmark size too. And sometimes you do see them more square. But basically they were something that merchants would, put their address, put an advertisement on, and give them out to patrons, give them out to people to get them to come to their store and buy their goods and services. And publishers and printers started printing these, with images on them, interesting images, sports images, landscape images, other images. And then what the printers would do was sell packs of these to merchants who would then ask them to be customized, put some text on the front, maybe a slogan or maybe your address, and then on the back, put a big ad or something about your company. And that way you had this really kind of cool, interesting image that, was produced, but then you had something that was specific to your business and you could hand them out to people. So, I mean, there's a lot of trade cards out there. You see them all over the place. I'm sure you've seen them. They're
these the ones that like
Goes.
like the cigar store or like the cigar advertisement ones. Those are okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with
cigars,
those.
could be, any kind of merchant, really. Yeah, and they're not usually very expensive, so you can pick them up pretty cheap if they're generic. That's the other thing, is because these were printed to be, kind of customized by, the people that were purchasing them, the merchants, the images on them are not of anyone typically that, right? They're usually cartoonish or, just kind of generic football images showing people kicking a ball, running with the ball, tackling somebody, things like that, but really nondescript and not very personal, right? But what's interesting is that another collector picked up a set of 6 trade cards that all had football images on them. And they all had football slogans at the bottom that seemed to be referencing plays in a game. And a couple of them actually mentioned real players on them. And this got him to dig into this. He took a deep dive into this, and he figured out that it appears that someone, maybe it was Yale University, maybe it was Princeton, maybe it was promoters of their big game in 1890, had a set created that references plays that happened during their big championship game in that year, 1890. And Yale ended up winning that game, and they won the national championship in 1890, beating Princeton. I think it was on Thanksgiving too, big rivalry game. They used to play back on Thanksgiving way back then. And he pieced this together, and he looked at newspaper clippings and kind of tried to figure out, for all the cards, who are the people that are being referred to in these slogans down at the bottom of these trade cards. Well, the easy one was Edgar Allan Poe, because that card actually has Poe's name on it. Interestingly enough, it's one of the ones that's mentioned. And it, by the way, looks nothing like, I'll show it in a minute. There's nothing, it doesn't look anything like Edgar Allan Poe. The uniform colors are all wrong. These are clearly not images that were produced for this purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
But someone repurposed them and made them work in terms of what happened in the game, which is kind of pretty cool. Actually, you could sort of consider it to be the first, football card set, really,
Right.
trade cards. But that's 1890. That predates Mayo by 4 years.
Didn't they used to have, I believe, that Thanksgiving game, Yale and Princeton, it was played in New York City quite often to try to get the crowds, and they tried to really put a lot of hubbub about it to get people to come in and pay the gate fee and everything. And I bet you that these cards might have been part of that. On the paraphernalia and getting everybody fired up for it. So very cool.
Now, based on the slogans, they would have been printed after the game because they reference the game. Okay. But they could have been done, shortly thereafter as a memento or something. Who knows? Who knows how these were used? The Edgar Allan Poe card on the bottom says, Peter Poe, the hero of the hour and the darling of the ladies. What's funny is the image has this football player with a crutch. He's got his arm in a sling. His head's all bandaged up. He's got a black eye. Well, if you read up on it, Edgar Allan Poe had some injury challenges his senior year, the fall of 1890. In fact, he did not make All-American in 1890. He made it in 1889, his junior year. He was not the All-American selection. Senior year, one is Princeton lost to Yale, and that, whoever won had pretty big influence over who was on the All-American team. But two is, he had injuries. He was hurt. I know he played in the game, but I also know he was in and out, and there were some challenges. So this picture was a perfect depiction of of Pete Poe or Edgar Allan Poe, all banged up, but still apparently the darling of the ladies. So he had that going for him, right?
Yeah, and probably Daddy's money didn't hurt either. So
well, yeah, exactly. Now, I've never seen another one of these trade cards that says Pete Poe, the hero of the hour and the darling of the ladies. Never seen another one of those. However, on eBay, my friend eBay, up popped the image, the trade card image. Here it is. Wow. It just says the hero of the hour and the darling of the ladies. They left off the Pete Poe. It's a different font. And this was definitely a merchant, because you got Best Carpenter and Company, clothier and hatters at the bottom. And on the back, there's an ad for Best and Carpenter or whatever they call. But this is the image that the card that that says Pete Poe, the hero of the hour and the darling of the ladies. You see how messed up he is
he's
on this trade card.
He's got that giant egg head on the little body too. That's right. This is it really reminds me of some like vintage, almost like children's books, like the old Aesop fables and stuff when we were kids that they would read to us, and it had these old vintage European images. That's what this reminds me of quite a bit. But very, very beautiful colors in it, and very football oriented. Very cool.
Yeah, once they started color printing, trade cards really took it up a notch, in the mid to late 1800s. And and a lot of them are drawn like this, they're caricatures. And there's a couple of pretty famous artists who did a lot of the artwork for trade cards. And they look like this typically when they depict people, particularly, baseball players, football players, other athletes. You'll see it almost like a cartoon type of a caricature. And you'll see the colors are all messed up. I mean, there's no color. It's.
I'm trying to figure out the two guys in the background must be throwing their hats up in the air in celebration, maybe.
I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure. The ball's laying there on the ground. It looks like a fumble to me. I'm not sure what's going on. And how did he get on the field with a crutch?
Yeah, he
That's what I
crutch
want to
and
know.
yeah, he's definitely banged up pretty good.
There is
So
actually this game, this 1890 Princeton versus Yale game. There is actually a famous painting. You'll see prints of it. You can get the prints really cheap of I think Yale scoring a touchdown that somebody did for this game. And I know the originals go for a lot of money, the original prints. But yeah, this is a pretty famous game that was out there.
yeah, wow, very cool.
Yeah, so that's my Edgar Allan Poe memorabilia and stories.
Yeah, I mean, that's excellent to be able to look back at the 19th century football. Football's, less than really maybe a decade and a half old, maybe at that time, of football that we
Mhm.
would recognize as being football and not rugby or soccer. That's
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very, very slick, and to have that much information about it is really cool too. Now,
Still no
we
passing though. No passing yet.
yeah, no passing. That's another few years after that.
That's right.
But now there's some really cool things like this that you share and others share in a group that we both belong to, that you
Mm.
manage and you know encourage people to share these things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe somebody out there might be interested in partaking in it and how they can do that too.
Yeah, sure, Darren. Love to. Yeah, so I started Vintage Football Community, VFC. It's been about, gosh, time flies, probably 5.5 years now or so. And really, it was because most of the forums that are out there, sports forums, hobby forums, very baseball focus. I like baseball. Baseball's a fine sport.
Hmm.
However, football is a better sport. And a lot of times there just wasn't a lot of football talk on these boards. It was dominated by baseball. And, at some point, I felt like, well, maybe football needs a home. Maybe I could create something where, collectors who really want to share and talk about the hobby and share knowledge and information could meet. A lot of times when you go to shows, you talk to dealers and they always say the same thing. They say, "What do you collect?" And I'm like, "Oh, I really like pre-war football." And they go, "Oh, there's none of that out there, boy. I don't even know what you collect." I'm thinking, well, you got to join VFC because there's a lot of stuff,
Oh
right? Like
yeah, a
we
lot
just
of cool
talked. You
stuff.
start looking at trade cards and cabinet cards and tobacco cards and all sorts of other types of memorabilia. There's a lot of pre-war stuff, and people don't know that. They don't know that because there's nowhere you can go and share it and talk about it and whatnot. And that's what VFC has become. So we're always looking for additional collectors, new members. It's free. If anybody out there's interested, you can, reach me through Darren or however you want to share my contact info. I'm always happy to talk to people about VFC and what we're doing. And if people want to share their knowledge and learn a lot in the process, because you'll learn a lot from others, it's a place to be for football.
Yeah, it's like opening up history pages of football every single day, and you
Mm-hmm.
really don't know what's going to come at you. You have it categorized, and it's so there's different genres. There's more modern football and pre-war and ancient football. I guess you would call it this category. It
Yeah.
doesn't get much older than that. The stocking cap era of football, and just some fascinating things. And usually the collectors have some great information on it, or a
Mm-hmm.
little backstory, or what it's all about, just like Jeff shared with us tonight. So it's a great organization, a great place to visit, and kill a few minutes each day on the old internet. It's a great thing. So
And
yeah,
you'll see something every week you've never seen before. I think my favorite word on VSC is wow. I say it all
all
the
right.
time because you see stuff and you're just like, where has this been all my life? I didn't even know this existed. And that happens, I swear, every week. Somebody posts something that those of us that have been collecting for a long time have never seen.
Yeah, I think
It's
I wear
amazing.
out the thumbs up like button on
Yeah.
my VFC entry every day, because that's
Yeah.
there's a lot
Oh,
of cool
geez.
stuff. Yeah, definitely. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your images here on the YouTube channel, sharing the stories of this great player from yesteryear, and a little bit about his family and his background. And well, it's just a cool thing that this guy's remembered 130 some years later by folks like you that preserve the history and by collecting it and then sharing the stories with others. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren. I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.